Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel The Studious Girl. Once again I am here with the class for class 12, chapter 1 history. Bricks, Beads and Bones is the chapter, and I will be going to teach you according to the curriculum of 2024 and 2025 for class 12 also, and I will be giving you tips and tricks as per my convenience whenever I will be able to. So today we are going to start class 12 history, and I will be working with class 11th and class 12 simultaneously, so you need to follow the channel as soon as possible. So let's start. Today, as I said, we are going to start chapter 1, Bricks, Beads and Bones, and this is the book themed Indian History Part 1. This is the introduction for the chapter. In this, we are going to come across a Harappan seal, which is possibly the most distinctive artifact of the Harappan or Indus Valley civilization. Harappan civilization and Indus Valley civilization is one and the same thing, so you need not to get confused about it. And made of a stone called steatite. Seals like this one often contain animal motifs and signs from a script that remains undeciphered till date. Harappan script is undeciphered till date, and this is a type of steel which we are talking about here in the introduction. This is a Harappan seal, as you can see. Now let's start with the subsistence strategies in Harappan civilization. So here we will start. There are some certain common elements including subsistence strategies. The Harappan ate a wide range of plant animal products including fish. Archaeologists have been able to reconstruct their dietary practices from finds of charred grain and seeds. Harappans used to eat a wide range of variety of food, and the archaeologists have found some charred grains from which they are able to construct their dietary practices, that yes, they might be eating this, they might be eating this. So let's see again. Archaeobotanists who are specialized in ancient plant remains, grains found at Harappan sites include wheat, barley, lentil, chickpea and sesame at the same time. Millets are found from sites in Gujarat, and finds of rice are relatively very rare. So these are the practices, dietary practices which Harappans used to follow. As mentioned, sesame, chickpea, lentil were also eaten by Harappans. Again, animal bones found at Harappan sites include those of cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo and pig. Studies done by archaeozoologists or zoo archaeologists indicate that these animals were domesticated. Goat, buffalo and pig were the animals found. Bones were found of these animals at the time of excavation, and zoo archaeologists have found that these were domesticated, and we do not know that some of the wild animal species are also being found. Bones of wild species such as boar, deer and gharial are also found. We do not know whether the Harappans hunted these animals themselves or obtained meat from other hunting communities. Bones of fish and fowl are also found. Fowl is teetar, what we call in Hindi is teetar for fowl, and these wild species were also found, their bones, in the excavation. So we can expect that either they were themselves hunting for meat, or otherwise they were exchanging their meat from some other hunting communities. So let's move further. And agricultural technologies. Now we'll come across how they used to do agriculture and their subsistence. While the prevalence of agriculture is indicated by the finds of grain, it is more difficult to reconstruct actual agriculture practices. There was a prevalence of agriculture in Harappan civilization. We come across it as we are claiming to know that they were having some dietary practices. Now it is hard to found why they were dietary practices. Representations on seals, terracotta sculptures indicate that bull was known, and archaeologists extrapolate from this that oxen were used for plowing. Terracotta sculptures were found, and in some of the terracotta sculptures we found a seal that was indicating that an oxen was used for plowing. So at that point of time we can claim, after seeing the seal, that yes, they were doing agriculture, as they oxen found used for plowing. Terracotta models of the plough have been found at sites in Cholistan and Banavali, Haryana. Archaeologists have also found evidence of ploughed field at Kalibangan, Rajasthan. The field had two sets of furrows at right angles to each other, suggesting that two different crops were grown together. The field had two sets of furrows. At the present time also, in villages, the agriculture is done when they have a pinpoint iron arc with the wooden stand. So, and that goes in deep into the ground and plows the field. So that was used in Harappan civilization also, as said here. Most Harappan sites are located in semi-arid lands and irrigation was probably required for agriculture. Traces of canals have been found at the Harappan site of Shortugai in Afghanistan. Water reservoirs found in Dholavira, Gujarat may have been used to store water for agriculture. We can see that they were doing agriculture for sure. Then they need to get water also, but the main sites were of Harappan civilization were in semi-arid land, so they need water. So there is a find archaeologists found that Dholavira was a water reservoir for the entire Harappan civilization in India, as the canals have been found in Shortugai, Afghanistan. So the traces of canals depict that Harappan civilization was expanded till the distance of Afghanistan. So, and this is a saddle cone, which is an NCRT picture. Saddle cones are found in considerable numbers and they seem to have been the only means in use for grinding cereals. Saddle cones were, which we called present day silbatta. This was that type at the time of Harappan civilization, and they used to grind cereals on this saddle cone. Next we come across Mohenjo-daro, a planned urban center. Most unique feature of the Harappan civilization was the development of urban center. Although Mohenjo-daro is most well-known site, the first site to be discovered was Harappa. First site was discovered, which was Harappa. That is why the name is Harappan civilization. And the second most important site is Mohenjo-daro. This is the urban center for the Harappan civilization. The settlement is divided into two sections. Smaller but higher is citadel, where large public buildings reside, and much larger area but lower is lower town, residential buildings. The citadel owes its height to the fact that buildings were constructed on mud brick platforms. It was walled, which meant that it was physically separated from the lower town, and the lower town was also walled. Citadel is where the high rich class people and buildings which were for public use resided, and lower town was an area where residential buildings, which means the people of the Harappan civilization used to live. That was the lower town, and people used to physically separate citadel and lower town. Citadel was at a very big height and its platform was on mud with bricks. The platform of citadel was made with bricks and mud. So, and they were separated. Citadel and lower town were separated, just like in present day. The cities and villages are separated as far as their cultures and their rituals. So it seems that settlement was first planned, then implemented accordingly. Various other signs of planning include bricks which were either sun-dried or baked, were of a standardized ratio of the bricks used in the entire settlement was 4:2:1 LBH. Length of the brick was 4 meters, breadth of the brick was 2 meters, and height of the brick was 1 meter. And this measurement was used for the bricks made and used in the entire settlement of Harappan civilization. Laying out drains. One of the most distinctive features of Harappan cities was the carefully planned drainage system. The very important question for MCQ comes here as, which is the most important feature for Harappan civilization? If there is an option including that Harappan urban center and Harappan drains, so you will be choosing Harappan drains is the most important feature. But if there is no option for drains, then you will be choosing the Harappan urban center. So this is one of the most important MCQ a child can confuse in. Roads and streets were laid out along an approximate grid pattern intersecting at right angles. It seems that streets with drains were laid out first, then houses were built along them. If domestic wastewater had to flow into the street drains, every house needed to have at least one. This means that roads were first laid and then streets were laid down. There was an approximate grid pattern which is present day, we can say Chauraha, which have all the four sides running and intersecting at right angles to each other, and seems that streets with drains were laid out first, and then houses were built along there. So firstly the drains are laid, then the streets are laid, then the roads are built, and then people can build their house on the roads. So this was the culture of Harappan civilization as the planning. And here next comes for domestic architecture. Many were centered on a courtyard with rooms on all sides. The courtyard was probably the center of activities such as cooking and weaving. Harappan civilization houses were probably having a courtyard in each house, and the courtyard was surrounded with rooms on all sides, and the courtyard was the center of mainly all the household chores and activities like cooking and weaving as said here. Now we come, interesting is the concern for their privacy. We presently talk about privacy, but at that point of time, during the ancient times in Harappan civilization, at that point of time, people concerning about privacy is a very big and a very important situation that we can see that at that time point of time also people were concerned about their privacy. So here let's see what were their opinions. There are no windows in the walls along. The main entrance does not give a direct view of the interior of the courtyard. Presently, in ground floor, the Harappan civilization did not have any windows, and their main entrance did not give the direct view of their interior. This means that they had their doors built in such a situation, the main doors, that if someone sees from the main door, they will not be able to get directly into their house. So this was a very important question comes if that privacy concerns. Okay. So come ahead. Every house had its own bathroom, paved with bricks, with drains connected through the wall to the street drains. Every washroom, bathroom where they used to get wash themselves, they were having, and it was connected to the drains directly so that the wastewater will flow directly into the drains, and it was lined with bricks. Some houses have remains of staircases to reach the second story or the roof. Many houses had wells, often in a room that could be reached from the outside and perhaps used by passerby. Some houses we have find, archaeologists have find that there were remains of stairs. That means that some houses were also having a two-story building at that point of time, which is a very huge thing. And there is found that every house almost have a room outside their house which had a well inside it for passerbys who can have water from that well. And next comes that scholars have estimated that the total number of wells in Mohenjo-daro was about 700. Mohenjo-daro had almost 700 wells, as I just said, that people were almost having, every house was having a well. So we can estimate almost twice or thrice the number of wells there were population at that point of time also. One thing more I would like to tell you, that Citadel and Lower Town is the division within Mohenjo-daro, not in Harappa. It is within the Mohenjo-daro. The Citadel. It is on the Citadel that we find evidence of structures that were probably used for special public purposes. These include the warehouse, a massive structure of which the lower brick portions remain while the upper portions probably of wood decayed long ago, and the great bath is another one. Warehouse was one of a thing where they used to store their all the stuffs like grains and everything from protection of the calamities, and other one was the great bath, which we'll be further getting to know about it. And warehouse, one thing more, warehouse was made up of wood on the upper portion which decayed as it has gone over a long time and various calamities, and the lower portion was made up of bricks which remains till today. Now we come across the great bath. Great bath was a large rectangular tank in a courtyard surrounded by a corridor on all four sides. There were two flights of steps on the north and south leading into the tank, which was made watertight by setting bricks on edge and using a mortar of gypsum. There were rooms on three sides in one, which was a large well. Water from the tank flowed into a huge drain. On the north lay a smaller building with 8 bathrooms, 4 on each side of a corridor, with drains from each bathroom connecting to a drain that ran along on the corridor. Scholars to suggest that it was meant for some kind of special ritual bathing. Great Bath was a very huge rectangular tank where almost, I think, approx at that point of time 100 people could enter at a time. So it was a very huge tank which was special purpose, had a special purpose of ritual bathing at that point of time. It was surrounded by corridors on all four sides. Both of the corridors had four bathrooms, each on each side, and they had a corridor running. The tank was connected to a drain. From that, the wastewater after the ritual bathing used to flow into the drain and let it flow across the drain and move it to the main drain. So this was all about Great Bath. Now we come to the social differences. Archaeologists generally use certain strategies to find out whether there were social or economic differences amongst people living within a particular culture. These include studying burials and identifying the material used by them commonly. At burials in Harappan sites, the dead were generally laid in pits. Some graves contain pottery and ornaments, perhaps indicating a belief that these could be used in the afterlife. Jewelry has been found in burials. We can identify the social differences at that point of time within the categories of people. Like just in present day also we have rich people, ultra rich people, poor people, and middle class. So at that point of time also some sort of categories exist. So there were two type of categories which we can found, and that is through social differences. As I said, that social differences were identified through burials, and the other one was materials used by them very commonly. So come ahead. The burial can be identified as the people. Like in the Hindu religion, uh, we fight we lit up a funeral pyre when someone dies, and in Christians and Muslims, the people are laid down in the ground. So this was the condition at that point of time in Harappan civilization, that people were generally, a pit was dug and they were laid down and it was covered. So that was the time. But we have found something that in Harappan civilization, people were laid down with their necessary items which they used to use. In present day, we burn. In Hindu, we burn. But at that point of time, they used to bury their essential things, like jewelry have been found in the burials, and copper mirrors has also been found, which was one very important thing. Now we can start. On the whole, it appears that the Harappans did not believe in burying precious things with dead. Harappan used to bury their things, the jewelry, with the dead ones, but they did not supported that yes, the bury something, some jewelry or something, yeah, precious things would have to be buried with the dead ones. Another strategy to identify social differences is to study artifacts, which archaeologists broadly classify as utilitarian and luxuries. Utilitarian is which the common things which we use in present day, like we use a spoon, we use a bowl, we use a glass of water, and every common thing. And luxuries are which are huge, like if I use a bowl and I use a Gucci bag, so there's a difference, no? So that is the difference, that if someone has buried a huge jewelry within their burials of their near and dear ones, so we can say that yes, this person belonged to rich family. And whereas if some people has buried just the common utensils the person used, so we can say that yes, this was not a rich person. So yeah, that's the difference. And that this was the way, another way after burials, how we could find that yes, categories existed, rich and poor, at that point of time also. Utilitarians included objects of daily use made fairly easily out of ordinary materials such as stone or clay. These included coins, pottery, needles, flesh rubbers, and are usually easily accessible throughout the settlement. Utilitarians, we can also say one thing, that if something is easily available and accessible, so we can see that yes, ye yahi mil jayega. And if something is not easily available, then we think about it from where to get it. So yes, this is also one of the biggest difference, that we can say, we can identify one thing as utilitarian or luxuries. Archaeologists assume objects were luxuries if they are rare or made from costly, non-local materials or with complicated technologies. Their definition for luxuries are costly, complicated technology से बना हुआ है, and it is having some sort of difference from the utilitarian objects. Hoards are objects kept carefully by people, often inside containers such as pots. All the gold jewelry found at Harappan sites was recovered from hoards. Present day, we are dependent on banks completely, that we can get a locker and we can put our essential precious items in the bank's locker. But at that point of time, no banks were existing, so they do not have a facility of locker. So they used to get some hoards, which are pots in which they used to keep their precious items, and might be they used to bury them in the ground, and but this is not stated. Hoards are found, and as it is saying that gold jewelry in Harappan site are almost found in hoards. All the gold jewelry acquired from Harappan sites are found in hoards, which were pots. Okay. Now come for craft production. This is a tiny settlement, less than 7 hectares. This is important for an MCQ part. As compared to Mohenjo-daro, 125 hectares. This can also be asked. Almost exclusively devoted to craft production, including bead making, shell cutting, metalworking, seal making, and bead making. For making beads, differed according to the material. Steatite, a very soft stone, was easily worked. Some beads were molded out of a paste made with steatite powder. This permitted making a variety of shapes, unlike geometrical forms made out of harder stones. One thing more, steatite was a material which we have found all across the civilization. So steatite was the most easily accessible stone at that point of time. And basically, according to the present conditions now, steatite was equals to present day clay. We mold clay anyhow, we stamp and everything, the clay gives us that. But when the clay is dried, it becomes as stiff that no one can break it. It has to be thrown off. So the same goes for steatite, that it could be molded easily, it could be stamped. So steatite was used in everything from bead making to seal making. So the first picture which I had shown at the time of introduction of seal, that was also made from steatite. So steatite was most prevalent at that point of time. For making beads, archaeologist experiments have revealed that red color of carnelian, that was a type of stone at that time, it was very precious, was obtained by firing the yellowish raw material. First point, beads at various stages of production, nodules were chipped into rough shapes and then finally flaked into the final form. Grinding, polishing and drilling completed the process. Specialized drills have been found at Chanudaro, Lothal and more recently at Dholavira. So this process of making carnelian, a yellowish raw material, which was firstly grind, polished, drilled and was finally flaked into a form of stone. So this is also one of the important questions for MCQs. And Chanudaro is the name for the craft production town center. So this is very important. It can come as MCQ and as well as a lengthy question. The highest marks of question can be 8 marks in history. So you need to be as comprehensive as you can and use the NCERT key terms. I'll say for each and every subject that use the NCERT key terms and you will get the result. That's my guarantee. Here come, in order to identify centers of craft production, archaeologists usually look for the following: raw material such as stone, nodules, whole shells, copper ore, tools, unfinished objects, rejects and wasted material. In fact, waste is one of the best indicators of craft work. These traces suggest that apart from small specialized centers, craft production was also undertaken in large cities such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. हम किसी चीज़ को कैसे ढूंढते हैं? आपने देखा है कभी कोई मूवी में कि कोई आदमी के पाँव से, उसके फुटप्रिंट्स से, उसके इम्प्रेशन से उसको ढूंढ लिया जाता है कई बार जब क्राइम सीन्स होते हैं. तो just like that, Chanudaro was also excavated through that process itself. they were digging and digging, archaeologists were digging, and they found some waste material. Like, we make a project, then we can see the chaos all around us, na, pieces of chart paper and pieces of tape and all that. So if someone comes out and that is remaining, as if we do not clean it, someone can easily assume that yes, some project work was being made here. So that was the same condition for Chanodaro, that people used to grind, polish, drill, all that. So some flakes were falling down on the ground and they were not used to clean. So at the time of digging, people used to found the flakes, the polished part of some bit of, when getting into the shape, they used to cut out some piece. So that was easily found, and that was the reason people said that yes, this part of the region must be a craft production center. But this is not the biggest craft production center was Chanudaro, but it is said that in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa also some craft production was being carried out. So here we come with the strategies for procuring material. How the Harappan people used to procure material for their stones and the bead making, shell making, etc. Variety of material were used for craft production, while some, such as clay, were locally available. Many, such as stone, timber, metal, had to be procured from outside the alluvial plain. Clay, uh, clay was locally available at every part of their region, but stone, steatite, every timber, metal, everything they used to acquire from outside the alluvial plain, which means the region where Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Punjab is the region, there is the alluvial plain. Terracotta toy models of bullock carts suggest that this was one important means of transporting goods and people across land roads. Terracotta toy model having found that bullock carts was also, people of Harappan civilization were much familiar with the bullock carts. So people and metals and products were also being travelled and transported through bullock carts at that point of time. Riverine routes along the Indus and its tributaries as well as coastal routes were also probably used. Harappans established settlements such as Nageshwar, Balakot in areas where shell was available. This is the first point from where they are procuring the material. First one is Nageshwar and Balakot. In areas where shell was available, shell was being acquired from Nageshwar and Balakot. They are near the Gujarat region. Shortuga in far of Afghanistan is the best source for lapis lazuli, a blue stone which is very highly valued. This was the second point, that they are acquiring Shortuga se lapis lazuli. Lothal, which was a near source of carnelian, was being acquired from Bharuch in Gujarat. Lothal was the region from where Bharuch is a point where they were acquiring carnelian, which is the refined red yellow stone. As I said, the procedure was important for grinding, polishing and drilling. Steatite from South Rajasthan and North Gujarat, and metal from Rajasthan. Another strategy for procuring raw material may have been to send expeditions to areas such as Khetri region of Rajasthan for copper, South India for gold. These expeditions established communication with local communities. As the people of Harappan civilization used to carry out and used to exchange materials for these stones and precious metals, so they had established a communication with all the local communities out there from south to the north of India. Here we come with, there is an evidence in Khetri area, which is in Rajasthan, for what archaeologists call the Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, with its non-Harappan pottery and an unusual wealth of copper objects. Khetri is the region in Rajasthan which is very famous for its copper, and it is, I think, one of the biggest source for copper in India. And there is a culture, Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, which is specifically in Rajasthan. So there we can find a non-Harappan pottery. So people said that here, if Harappans would be coming, that there would be only the region for getting copper or any other metal, but not they were standing here, as there was the pottery which was non-Harappan. So they said that this is not the region of Harappan civilization. Chemical analysis have shown that both Omani copper and Harappan artifacts have traces of nickel, suggesting a common origin. Copper was brought from Oman, which is a region far in Arabia across. So yes, copper is having the traces of nickels which was found in Harappan civilization. So it is said and the traces are exactly in same proportion was also found in Omani copper. So archaeologists have been assuming that the Omani copper was being carried to Harappa at that point of time through sea routes. And a distinctive type of vessel, a large Harappan jar coated with a thick layer of black clay, has been found at Omani sites. Such thick coatings prevent the percolation of liquids. Percolation means evaporation. We do not know what was carried in these vessels, but it is possible that the Harappans exchanged the contents of these vessels for Omani copper. In Oman, archaeologists have found that there were black coated jars at their seaports, so which are assumed that people of Harappan civilization have exchanged the material of that jar for getting Omani copper. Mesopotamian texts datable to the 3rd millennium BCE refer to copper coming from a region called Magan, perhaps a name from Oman. This means there is a big confusion, so you need to be attentive about it. You can write that Oman is equals to Magan. For a short note, I am saying that Oman is equals to Magan because Oman is also a name and Magan is also a name from the same region. And Mesopotamian text mentions a contact with a region named Dilmun, probably the island of Bahari. For Dilmun, you can mention that Dilmun is equals to island of Bahari. Magan and Meluha, possibly the Harappan region. Magan and Meluha. Mesopotamian texts datable to the 3rd millennium BCE refer to copper coming from a region called Magan, perhaps a name from Oman. This means there is a big confusion, so you need to be attentive about it. You can write that Oman is equals to Magan. For a short note, I am saying that Oman is equals to Magan because Oman is also a name and Magan is also a name from the same region. And Mesopotamian text mentions a contact with a region named Dilmun, probably the island of Bahari. For Dilmun, you can mention that Dilmun is equals to island of Bahari. Magan and Meluha, possibly the Harappan region. Magan and Meluha are assumed to be the regions of Harappan civilization. They mention the products from Meluha were being carried out: carnelian, lapis lazuli, copper, gold, and varieties of wood. Earlier, I informed you that gold was carried out by South India, Karnataka mines, and lapis lazuli was from Shortugai. They are the main centers. But otherwise, also from, as you can see, that Meluha was also being carried out for carnelian, lapis lazuli, copper, gold, and varieties of wood. So, not was a single source. They were expanding their sources and getting all the same things from every region from where they could get. So yeah, here we come. A Mesopotamian myth says of Meluha, may your bird be the Haja bird. May it is called be heard in the royal palaces. Some archaeologists think that the Haja bird was the peacock. This is a myth. I hope you can learn it. It's a very short one. So you can learn it in exact words, and the Haja bird means the peacock of India. So this is a myth, as archaeologists said. Mesopotamian text refers to Meluha, which we read in the earlier slide, as land of seafarers. Besides, we find depictions of ship and boats on seals. This is the depiction of ship on seal, and this is the seal. Seal, or we can say a coin might be which they may be using. So yes. Now we come across the seal, script and weights. Seals and sealings were used to facilitate long distance communication. Now I will be telling how the seals were used for carrying out the communication from one distance to other distance. Imagine a bag of goods being sent from one place to another. Its mouth was tied with a rope. On the knot was affixed some wet clay on which one or more seals were pressed, leaving an impression. If the bag reached with its sealing intact, it means that it had not been tampered with. The sealing also conveyed the identity of the sender. Now just imagine one thing, that you have sent some stuff, you kept in a bag, you tied it with a rope, then they used to we to tie the knot, but they were not aware about the knot. So they used to put a wet clay on it. Then every single person in Harappan civilization had their own impression of seal, which they stamp on it. So they put a wet clay and they stamp their seal, which sends their identity. So this was the way. And if the person who was being who the product was being sent to, so if they reach the product without being tempered, means the seal is not being broken, or somewhere it is said that might be it has been tempered, means कोशिश की गई है कि वो खुल जाए कैसे. तो अगर वो इंटैक्ट पहुंची है चीज़, तो इट इज सेड दैट यस द प्रोडक्ट हैज़ बीन रीच्ड. बट अगर वो सील टूटी है या कुछ भी हुआ है उस प्रोडक्ट के साथ, तो यू विल बी इजीली एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई अबाउट इट. Harappan seals usually have a line of writing, probably containing the name and title of the owner. Scholars have also suggested that the motif, generally an animal, conveyed a meaning to those who could not read. So आजकल भी वो लोग हैं जो अभी तक भी नहीं पढ़ सकते हैं. A rare person, but yes, there are some people in villages out there that who cannot read. At that point of time also in Harappan civilization, firstly they have a huge script, so all were not able to learn. So they started signs. Animal depicts some representation or some state or some word. So they started stamping an animal which sends the identity to the person who is not able to read. So he can identify the identity from that animal, particular animal. Okay. So yes, most inscriptions are short and the longest containing about 26 signs. One thing more, that Harappan civilization was such a vast civilization that, and they were not much developed, but according to that point of time they were vastly developed. So present day we write alphabets for writing, we write alphabets, but in that time they were symbols. For each and every letter they used to have symbols, and they were across 375 to 400 symbols in that time. So it was not easy to resemble everything. So yes, they were, the longest inscription we have is of 26 signs. Means not very learned people were there who could easily remind themselves such huge number of signs. Even we as people cannot resemble almost 375 to 400 signs. It is impossible for a person. So that was the condition. So we have the longest inscription for 26 signs. Although the script remains undeciphered till date, Harappan civilization script is not deciphered till date. It was evidently not alphabetical, where each sign stands for a vowel or a consonant. As it has just too many signs, somewhere between 375 and 400, it is apparent that the script was written from right to left, as some seals show wider spacing on the right and cramping on the left, as if the engraver began working from right and then ran out of space. This means we write from the margin, our margin is at left. But at the time of Harappans, they used to write from the right. Their margin was on right, and the cramping is able to be seen in the inscriptions at the left. So we are assuming that yes, they used to write from right to left, not from left to right as we write. So you can easily remember it that जैसे हम लिखते हैं उसका उल्टा हरप्पन्स लिखते थे. Exchange were regulated by precise system of weights, usually made of a stone called chert. The weights, जैसे आज हम स्टील के देखते हैं ना, जब सब्जी वाले भैया आते हैं तो वैसे रख देते हैं और वो बैलेंस हो जाता है तराजू. उस टाइम पे वो चर्ट के बने होते थे स्टोन. चर्ट इज अ टाइप ऑफ मटेरियल इफ यू गूगल इट. सो एंड जनरली क्यूबिकल विद नो मार्किंग्स. उस टाइम पर किसी वेइंग स्टोन पे कोई मार्किंग्स नहीं होती थी. जैसे आजकल तो वो स्टोन पे स्टील वाले पे उस पर लिखा होगा ना 500 ग्राम 1 किलो, वो वाला. The lower denominations of weights were binary, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, while the higher denominations followed the decimal system of 160, 200, 320, 640. The smaller weights were probably used for weighing jewelry and beads. Metal scale pans have also been found. Means binary digits were used for weighing jewelry and beads, etc. Whereas metal scale pans, which was a huge pan, was used as higher denominations of 640 numbers. Now we come to the ancient authority. As we have studied before that everything was happening with proper planning. So the question arises, who was doing this planning perfectly in this ancient time? It is not when every civilization was such not very much developed. Harappan civilization was so perfectly planned that everything was accurate. Ancient authority, as we have studied before that, everything was happening with proper planning. So the question arises, who was doing this planning perfectly in that time? It is that every civilization was being settled, but this perfection was not there with every civilization. So let's study what was the reason about it. A large building found at Mohenjo-daro was labeled as a palace by archaeologists, but no spectacular finds were associated with it. There was a large building found which was stated as a palace by the archaeologists, but we have no confirmations about it. What was it? A stone statue was labeled and continues to be known as the priest king. We knew that in Mesopotamia also we learned that priest king was there. This is because archaeologists were familiar with the Mesopotamian history and its priest kings and have found parallels in the Indus region. But as we will see, the ritual practices of the Harappan civilization are not well understood yet, nor there any means of knowing whether those who performed them also had political power. Ritual practices, we are not confirmed about it, that what were the ritual practices followed in Harappan civilization and who were doing that, and those people who were doing that might be they be having political powers or not. We are not confirmed anything about it. And here we come, archaeologists come out with three opinions. Harappan society had no rulers, that everybody enjoyed equal status. Archaeologists said there are three conditions. The first one was that might be there would be no ruler and everyone enjoyed their equal status. Others feel there were no single ruler but several, that Mohenjo-daro had a separate ruler, Harappan another ruler, and so forth. The third condition was, others argue that there was a single state given the similarity in artifacts, the evidence for planned settlements, the standardized ratio of brick size, which was 4:2:1 LBH, and the establishment of settlements near sources of raw materials. There was something, that's for sure, but we are not confirmed, so we can't say anything about it. So the second point states that there was no single ruler, but every city like Harappan, Mohenjo-daro, Chamundaro, Lothal, every city had their separate rulers according to the second opinion of archaeologists. But the last opinion said that the entire Harappan civilization was under one single ruler. And according to me also, the last theory seems to be more plausible, because plausible means same as possible first of all, and I was saying the keyword which is written in NCERT according to it. And plausible because the last theory states that there is similarity in artifacts in the entire civilization, that's for sure. And the perfectly planned, which means there was one on the other authority also. So the last one seems to be more plausible at last, that yes, there was a single ruler within the entire civilization. So yes, the next comes the end of the civilization. There is evidence that by 1800 BCE, most of the mature Harappan sites in regions such as Cholistan had been abandoned. I'll show you the map for the most mature sites. And Cholistan was being abandoned by 1800 BC as per the reports of archaeologists. Simultaneously, there was an expansion of population into new settlements in Gujarat, Haryana and western Uttar Pradesh. There was an expansion of population moving from the Harappan regions of Harappan civilization to western Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Gujarat. In the few Harappan sites that continued to be occupied after 1900 BC, there appears to have been a transformation of material culture marked by disappearance of distinctive artifacts of civilization, weeds, seals and special beads. After 1900 BCE, the people after 1800 also who were living at the Harappan civilization also in 1900 BCE, they started changing their cultures from material to every social culture. So this was also seen as an end of the civilization. Writing, long distance trade, craft specialization also disappeared. Everything started disappearing slowly, as it was an indication, according to me, that yes, the civilization is near to its end. House construction techniques deteriorated and large public structures were no longer produced. The construction techniques also started getting reduced, that and the not good quality of material started to be input in the building and everything like that. Artifacts and settlements indicate a rural way of life, what are called late Harappan or successor cultures. Successor cultures or late Harappan cultures are that at that time what things were used is for us a successor culture. Several explanations have been put forward. These range from climatic change, deforestation, excessive floods, shifting or drying up of rivers to overuse of the landscapes. These are the conditions stating that these were the reasons for end of the civilization. But as you continue your graduation and for the studies in subject history, you will come across that there are some reasons said as might be there was a Mauryan invasion at that point of time. That was the reason the population started shifting to various other sites to western UP, Haryana and Gujarat. So, discovering the civilization. Cunningham's main interest was in the archaeology of early historic century and later periods. Cunningham's interest was in early historic period, so he was not very much worried about the previous period, but he was about the before period when he was living. He used the accounts left by Chinese Buddhist pilgrims who had visited the subcontinent between 4th to 7th century CE to locate early settlements. He used the accounts left by the Chinese Buddhist pilgrims who visited at the time of 4th to 7th century when Harappan civilization did not exist. Cunningham was not discovered actually. Harappan civilization from 4th to 7th century, at that point of time, no one was knowing about it. Cunningham also collected, documented and translated inscriptions found during his survey. A site like Harappa, which was not a part of the itinerary of the Chinese pilgrims and was not known as early historic city, did not fit very neatly within his framework of investigation. Actually, Harappa was not the itinerary of Chinese pilgrims because it was not known at that point when they were traveling in 4th to 7th century. So, Harappa was not that much famous, so Chinese pilgrims did not went to Harappa at that point of time. Their itinerary में वो नहीं था कि वहाँ से घूम के जाना है. That was not there. So it did not fit in that framework of investigation according to which the Cunningham did. Alexander Cunningham was the first Director General of ASI, Archaeological Survey of India. A Harappan seal was given to Cunningham by an Englishman. He noted the object but unsuccessfully tried to place it within the time frame with which he was familiar. This was because he, like many others, thought that Indian history began with the first cities in the Ganga Valley. There was a very common, I can say, myth or anything you consider it. Majorly, people consider that Indian civilization, India started from Ganga Valley. First city was in Ganga Valley. But when Harappan civilization was discovered, then a statement is said that when Alexander Cunningham initiated the excavations, at that point of time, India was almost expected that it is started in firstly in Ganga Valley. But when he left, it was the time when he left India almost 300 to 400 years back. Means India's history also expanded with his leaving. Okay, you will come across. Some seals discovered at Harappa by archaeologist as Dayaram Sahani. This is also an important question for MCQ. Harappa by Dayaram Sahani. Another archaeologist, Rakhaldas Banerjee, found similar seals at Mohenjo-daro. Rakhaldas Banerjee from Mohenjo-daro. In 1924, John Marshall, Director General of ASI, announced the discovery of a new civilization in Indus Valley to the world. This is important question. 1924, John Marshall. Alexander Cunningham started the excavation, but he did not announce it. So in 1924, John Marshall, Director General of ASI, he took the position in 1924 and he announced that the discovery of new civilization in Indus Valley. So who announced? In 1924, John Marshall announced the discovery of Indus Valley Civilization. A as S. N. Roy. This is also an important name. MCQ can come over here. Noted in the Story of Indian Archaeology. This is the book. Story of Indian Archaeology. Marshall left India 3000 years older than he had found her. This, I'm sorry, my pardon. I said for Alexander Cunningham, but the statement is for Marshall. John Marshall left India 3000 years back at the time when he entered India. Okay, so let's move to the next one. In fact, John Marshall's stint as Director General of the ASI marked a major change in Indian archaeology. He was the first professional archaeologist to work in India and brought his experience of working in Greece and Crete to the field. Greece and Crete is the important one, can become in MCQs. So, John Marshall's Director General of ASI in major change in Indian archaeology. He brought a major change because Alexander Cunningham just found something and something, because he was jumbled in the itinerary and the Buddhist pilgrims, that seal. He was confused. But John Marshall, as he came and he started working and he announced. He was having the experience of working in Greece and Crete. This must also have helped him. Marshall tended to excavate along regular horizontal lines, measured uniformly throughout the mount, ignoring the stratigraphy of the site. This meant that all the artifacts recovered from the same unit were grouped together, even if they were found at different stratigraphic layers. Horizontal units में उन्होंने खुदाई कर दी. Everyone is not perfect, so John Marshall did one thing good, but he did one thing exceptionally bad. So that was that he started digging around the horizontal units or of the stratigraphic layers. If something is getting buried, first one, then second one, then third one, that's how something gets buried. Then if one discovers everything within horizontal unit, so he'll be digging and digging, everything will be coming up together. But if he is removing it simultaneously, not digging, he's removing simultaneously, so that will be much better, that a person is able to identify that this is the latest one, then something which is found beneath it, that will be a much older one, and that will be another one will be much older one. This was the issue with Marshall. He ruined along the horizontal units. As a result of the Marshall's excavation along regular horizontal units, valuable information about the context of these finds was irretrievably lost. It was R.E.M. Wheeler, another ASI journal, after he took over as Director General of ASI in 1944. John Marshall came in 1924, R.E.M. Wheeler came in 1944, who rectified this problem. He considered that problem, that yes, this is a problem, this cannot be overcome. So he changed it. He decided to change the process, how to excavate. Wheeler recognized that it was necessary to follow the stratigraphy of the mound rather than digging mechanically along the uniform horizontal lines. आराम से साफ करनी थी वो चीज़ें, हमें खुदाई नहीं करनी थी, बिकॉज अगर हम किसी चीज़ को बहुत धीरे धीरे हटाते हैं तो वो धीरे धीरे निकलेंगी चीज़ें, बट अगर हम एक साथ खुदाई कर देंगे तो वो सारी चीज़ें एक साथ आ जाएंगी, तो हमें नहीं पता चलेगा कौन सा लेटेस्ट है कौन सा सबसे लास्ट में. दैट वाज द प्रॉब्लम विद Marshall. The mount, rather than digging mechanically, uniform horizontal lines. Moreover, as an ex-army brigadier, this can be an MCQ, another one, that R.E.M. Wheeler brought which type of experience with him? He was an ex-army brigadier. He brought with him a military precision to the practice of archaeology. Might be before Wheeler, the archaeology was taken as light as something which was not very much important, but as he took the position of Director General of ASI, he started everything to be worked as a military process. So he tightened up every single process which is working under his directions. So everyone was very much serious about it. Now comes the problems of piecing them together. This is the very last topic. Then I'll be showing you the pictures and the last one the map. Early archaeologists thought that certain objects which seemed unusual or unfamiliar may have had a religious significance. कुछ भी चीज़ उन्हें मिलती थी तो उन्हें लगता था, क्योंकि उन्हें सबके बारे में पता चला, but they left a single point which was religious significance about the Harappan civilization. So these included terracotta figurines of women like this, heavily jeweled, some with elaborate headdresses. Headdresses, something during excavation, I think some designs have missed it, but yes, there must be heavy headdresses. These were regarded as mother goddess. She was considered as the mother goddess. This is a direct picture from NCERT. Rare stone statuary of men in almost standardized posture, seated with one hand on the knee, such as the priest king, was also similarly classified. Another stone statuary was found, which was saying that it was a standardized posture of Shiva, like one hand on the knee and one leg is down, one is up. And these included the Great Bath and fire altars found at Kalibangan and Lothal. Great Bath, as I said, it was considered as a special ritual bathing for purpose. Okay, and fire altars are the Havan Kund which we say. तो इन दोनों चीज़ों को इन्होंने religious significance के तौर पे consider किया था. Some animals such as the one-horned animal called the unicorn presently depicted on the seal seem to be a mythical composite creature. हम लोग तो यूनिकॉर्न जानते हैं कि फेरी टेल्स का एनिमल है और यहाँ पर जनरली नहीं मिलता है अपनी कंट्री में स्पेसिफिकली, बट उनके लिए ये बहुत एक कॉम्पोजिट क्रीचर था जिसके बारे में उन्हें कुछ पता भी नहीं था. तो दे वर लाइक दिस इज ऑल्सो सम सॉर्ट ऑफ रिलीजियस सिग्निफिकेंस. In some seals, a figure shown seated cross-legged in a yogic posture, sometimes surrounded by animals, has been regarded as a depiction of Proto-Shiva, that is an early form of one of the major deities of Hinduism. As I said कि एक वो मिली है posture जिसमें seals में एक cross-legged person is sitting in a yogic posture like this when we put in meditation. So they said it as Proto-Shiva, and it is the major deity of Hinduism in the early form of Hinduism. Okay. Besides, conical stone objects have been classified as lingas. Some small stones are found. They are saying it as lingas because if they are considering a posture as proto Shiva, they will obviously consider it as a linga, which is worshipped form of Shiva. The earliest religious text, the Rig Veda, mentions a god named Rudra, which is name used for Shiva in later Puranic traditions. However, unlike Shiva, Rudra in the Rig Veda is neither depicted as Pashupati, the lord of animals and journal cattle, nor as a yogi. Shiva and Rudra do not match as Pashupati because Pashupati is the lord of animals and cattle and he was not as a yogi. So neither Rudra nor Shiva match with Pashupati, but they are the form of the one main deity. In other words, this depiction do not match with the description of Rudra in Rig Veda. Okay. Here we come with the pictures. This is the priest king. This is lingas, which I said small conical objects, and this is the proto Shiva seal. You can see this, the hands, the leg posture, and the animals over here. So this seal was considered as proto Shiva seal. Okay. Here we come to the last part of our chapter for maps. Okay, so these are the mature Harappan sites. This is the first map of our book in the, I do not know the page number, but yes, this is the first map on the second or third page of the book. So here, first major important site Mohenjo-daro. Another important site Chanodaro, which was of size of 7 hectares. Okay, and Mohenjo-daro was the size of 125 hectares. Kotdiji is a port for them. Harappan civilization, Dholavira, where we got the water reservoirs. Nageshwar and Balakot. Balakot is here. It is not circled. I'm sorry. Nageshwar and Balakot, which were for shell. And here we come to Lothal for carnelian. And here we come to Kalibangan and Harappa, Banavali. Kalibangan, Banavali for Kalibangan was for plowed field and Banavali was for terracotta models. Harappa, the main site behind which the name is said as Harappan civilization. And here is Rakhigadi. these are the main important sites. Other are the rivers which are not important, and these are the main which can come in exam. So you should be ready about the, and I think now you are completely aware about the chapter, so you are ready for the test to be coming up or anything which is coming up. So I wish you the best of luck, and this is the Studies Girl signing off. Thank you very much.